and influence various cultures, peoples, and forms of investiture. Nightblood will most likely have a part to play in Rhythm of War, so feel free to check back here after the book is out.
Yeah, let's talk about that, shall we? Nightblood sure does like destroying evil. He only does that one thing, but damnation he does it well. In my previous Nightblood video, we examined its abilities and talked a little bit about how this magic talking sword that bleeds black smoke came into being. If you haven't seen that yet, I'd recommend you watch that video first. This video zooms in and takes a closer look at the sword's role in Rhythm of War. In particular, one awesome day. Not only did it get shoved directly into a perpendicularity, but it got to kill the vessel of a shard as well, specifically that of Odium, who was definitely, absolutely, positively evil. Let's take a walk in Nightblood's sheath, and take some time to examine the role that it played throughout Rhythm of War. Our favorite evil-destroying sword starts the book off in a jail cell with Seth, who has sworn to protect Dalinar and follow his will. Dalinar is obviously pretty weirded out by this, as Seth has tried to assassinate Dalinar multiple times throughout Words of Radiance. He's well aware of the danger an unhinged Seth could do with a sword such as Nightblood, but can't think of a better place to keep the both of them, so he decides to leave them locked up together for a time until measures can be taken. This plan changes upon Dalinar's decision to make war an Emul, as he figures it would be a pretty good idea to bring Seth along to act as a bodyguard, dragging Nightblood along for the ride. If they're gonna be somewhere, it might as well be around Dalinar, keeping him safe. And as far as we know, Nightblood was never drawn over the course of the war itself, presumably to keep up Seth's bodyguard ruse. A day came in the war when the human faction had all but won. Seeking to learn more about his own powers, Dalinar decided to do something he'd been putting off for ages. He planned to fly to Tukar, confront Ishar, and convince him to teach Dalinar everything that he can about bondsmithing. Seems easy enough, right? Well, there is one big issue. Ishar is absolutely insane. I talk a little bit more about him in this video, and have a lot more to say about his exploits in a Herald update video, whose link is in the top right. To sum it up though, Ishar is mentally gone, and is convinced that Dalinar has sided with Odium. Both Seth and Nightblood are there with him, but have been staying back to let Dalinar do the talking up until this point. And talking quickly devolves into violence. Ishar attacks Dalinar's guard using his honor blade? Wait, how did he get that? Whatever. Either way, Ishar recovered his honor blade, either by asking for it or stealing it somehow. It once belonged to Seth's father, and the overwhelming implications of this hit Seth like a freight train, paralyzing him on the spot. Ishar's honor blade grants him access to every bondsmith ability, unchained by honor's constraints upon the heralds, since, honor is super dead. Ishar, being as insane as he is, decides to use his honor blade to steal Dalinar's bond to the Stormfather, while Dalinar is distracted with opening his own perpendicularity. Yeah, it's just as nuts as it sounds. And Ishar would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for that meddling sword. Upon seeing Dalinar's bond about to be stolen, Seth springs into action, drawing Nightblood and severing the connection that Ishar formed with Dalinar to steal the Stormfather. Luckily, Nightblood was able to sever the connection in time, and Dalinar's bond was not stolen. And just for good measure, Seth jams Nightblood into Dalinar's perpendicularity, collapsing it in on itself and sucking huge amounts of investiture into Nightblood in the process. Nightblood is pretty satisfied at this point, but his job is not yet done. There is still a long way to go before the day is over. Ishar and Seth proceed to have a shouting match, with Seth accusing Ishar of killing his father. Ishar, being a maniac, confirms this, while Seth is standing right in front of him, holding a blade that just collapsed at perpendicularity. Yeah, Ishar has a lot of book smarts, but really needs to work on his street smarts. Szeth, of course, charges right at Ishar. When Nightblood connects with the Honor Blade, sparks explode through the air, throwing the two combatants backwards. The smoke clears, and it's revealed that Nightblood took a chunk out of the Honor Blade, something that should not be possible, at least with any conventional Shard Blade or Honor Blade. But I do think it's safe to say at this point that Nightblood is anything but conventional. Once Ishar disappears into a perpendicularity he seems to have found lying around somewhere, he and his followers disappear into the cognitive realm. Following this, Dalinar stumbles across a few of Ishar's crimes against humanity and decides to peace out back to Amul. We'll talk about that in another video, I promise. For now, let's keep our focus on Nightblood. When Dalinar, Szeth, and Nightblood head back to Amul, they go their separate ways. Szeth is storming mad. He just got news that his father is dead, and, well, it's kind of convoluted. The important part is that Taravangian has been manipulating Szeth all book, and Ishar just confirmed Szeth's father is dead, something Taravangian had already told Szeth while trying to manipulate him earlier in Rhythm of War or whatever. This, understandably, pisses Szeth right off. When he gets to Taravangian, Szeth finds him in a state of pure emotion, pure passion. And yeah, Szeth straight up kills him. Not with Nightblood, mind you, but with a knife. And right then, Odium decides he wants to crash the party. Fresh off getting diplomatically manhandled by Dalinar, Odium decides to pay Taravangian a visit. And thus, in a singular room, we find Taravangian, Odium, and Nightblood. In very quick succession, a few important things happen. Odium pulls a dying Taravangian into the cognitive realm. Taravangian draws Nightblood, which Odium had not seen up to this point. Taravangian then kills Odium with Nightblood. But the power of a whole shard is far too much for Nightblood to absorb, even on a day when he hasn't just eaten a perpendicularity and taken a bite out of Ishar's Honor Blade. Odium's vessel, Race, is left in a smoking pile on the ground, with the power of Odium lingering around the cognitive, waiting. Taravangian thrusts his hands out toward the power, ascending to godhood, ascending to Odium. We won't go over any of the implications of the new Odium here, those have already been discussed at length. Instead, let's focus our attention on Nightblood's role in all this, and glean what we can about the nature of everyone's favorite evil-destroying sword. Now that we've had a refresher on what Nightblood's been up to, let's go ahead and look at the implications of his scenes throughout the book. We'll examine them, both in the in-universe context of the Cosmere, as well as Mr. Sanderson's metatextual reasonings for making these decisions. The biggest takeaway from all these scenes is that now Nightblood has had some hard limits put on the things that he can destroy. We now know that Nightblood can collapse a perpendicularity, though he cannot stop it from existing. If you're interested in the finer intricacies about perpendicularities, I'd recommend you check out my Cosmere Magic series. There, I dive far deeper into the topic than I can justifiably fit into this section. For now, let's suffice to say that a perpendicularity occurs when large amounts of investiture conglomerate in one place. And we know that Nightblood functions by sucking up any investiture that it can find. I think we can piece together where the sword can collapse a perpendicularity without actually destroying the ability for it to exist. I would wager that once Nightblood is stabbed into a perpendicularity, it immediately consumes as much investiture as it can. Since so much investiture is being sucked up so quickly, it causes the necessary concentration of investiture to collapse, temporarily destroying the structural integrity of the perpendicularity in question. However, Nightblood cannot suck up enough investiture from the spiritual realm quickly enough to do any lasting damage. We'll have to wait for all of this to be confirmed to be certain, but it appears to be the most plausible explanation as to what's happening on a realmatic level. Next, let's look at Nightblood's ability to chip an Honor Blade. I think that Nightblood was able to suck up some of the Honor Blade's investiture, but it is unclear whether or not this actually affects the functioning of the Honor Blade. An Honor Blade is essentially a gigantic chunk of Honor's god metal, which raises a few questions. With Honor dead, will the blade be able to regrow the chunk that was lost? I would assume not, unless our characters find a way to reunite Honor. The question is also raised whether the lost investiture is able to even be replicated, or if Nightblood has somehow locked it away. My guess here is that if Honor is reassembled, he will be able to reproduce the lost investiture, whether or not the original bits are still trapped in Nightblood. There's still too much we don't know about the precise mechanics of Nightblood and how it works to be certain as to what is going on with the investiture that it eats, so we'll just have to wait to get a definitive answer on this particular subject. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing Ishar's chipped sword in the next book, because that guy totally had it coming. Nightblood's final act in Rhythm of War is possibly the single most fateful event we've witnessed in the Cosmere so far, the death of Wraiths and the resulting ascension of Taravangian to Odium. The first thing to note is that Taravangian drew Nightblood somewhere in between the cognitive realm and the physical realm, stabbing Odium in the cognitive. How this transition worked exactly is unknown, and quite a bit is left to be desired here on a realmatic level. The important takeaway is that Nightblood does appear to have some sort of ability to be drawn in the cognitive realm, though the text is vague in this regard. Next, Nightblood is able to kill the vessel of a shard, but is unable to destroy the shard itself. It would appear that there is too much there for Nightblood to consume, at least in any reasonable amount of time. The last interesting note is that Wraiths appeared in the physical realm afterwards, blackened and charred from Nightblood, but intact enough for a body to be deposited in the physical. This is notable since every being we've seen Nightblood devour on Roshar has popped into black smoke, which is promptly sucked into the blade. I would assume that Nightblood was unable to consume Wraith's entire body as it had feasted on a small chunk of the shard already. In simpler terms, it gorged on the larger piece investiture set before it, but still took enough of Wraith's physical form away to kill him. However, I am unconvinced that this is what actually happened. What do you think? I'd love to hear your personal theories on the matter in the comments. I do read them all, and I love hearing what you have to say. On a metatextual level, I think there are a few things that Mr. Sanderson is trying to accomplish with Nightblood throughout Rhythm of War. Up front, he's placed several hard limits on what Nightblood is and isn't able to destroy, something that has been a long time coming. Up until now, we've seen Nightblood destroy almost anything that has crossed its path, so it's nice to see a few things that are able to stand against it, if only temporarily. It's also nice to know that Nightblood can't straight up murder shards, as that would make it insanely overpowered. And setting up the Honor Blades as a way to counteract Nightblood is much needed as well. I will say that Nightblood's involvement levels in this book were insanely backloaded, with almost every plot point involving the sword happening in the final of the 5 parts. I think that Sanderson is setting Nightblood up for some big plot points in Book 5, especially with Seth headed to cleanse Shinovar any day now. And to give any sense of weight to what Seth is about to accomplish, a ton of limits had to very quickly be placed on Nightblood's power so that it didn't feel like these limits came out of nowhere in Book 5. And I'm sure Sanderson's had these limits in his head for years, but now was the optimal time to make them known. I mean, there are only so many opportunities to collapse a perpendicularity or kill a god. This, of course, makes me look forward to Nightblood's involvement in Book 5 all the more. Before I leave you folks, I have to point out one final thing. I think we can safely assume this was Nightblood's favorite day ever. Not only did he get to drink directly out of a perpendicularity and chip the honor blade of a decidedly evil wielder, he also got to kill the vessel of a shard. And not just any shard, the shard of odium, pure, passionate, raging hatred. If this talking, smoking, evil-destroying sword remembers this day, it will be with deep fondness. What are your Nightblood theories? What sort of role do you think it'll play in the last 5 Stormlight books and beyond? I have a feeling that this won't be my last Nightblood video. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about after Stormlight Book 5, and I will see you there. Colors above, I've had fun talking about all this with you. Check out my Twitter and Instagram for some quality creme posting as well as general updates. You'll also see updates pop up on YouTube if you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on. I'll see you all in the next video, and in the meantime, have a fantastic day, folks.